Have you ever opened your mouth to speak English and felt your brain go completely blank, even though you know you have the words somewhere inside you? Like they are sitting on a shelf perfectly organized, but the moment you need one, your hand just cannot reach it. And then you start smiling and nodding, or you say something much smaller than what you actually wanted to say. And later you replay the moment in your head and think, why did I sound like that? Why could I not just talk like a normal person? If that sounds familiar, I want you to know something right away. You are not broken. You are not bad at English, and you are definitely not alone. I have watched so many smart, capable adults freeze like this in meetings, at parties, at airport counters, in small talk with neighbors, even with friends they trust. And what changed everything for me as a teacher was not a new technique or a better worksheet, it was listening. Really listening to the stories people told me about what was happening inside them when they tried to speak. Today, I want to share 5 stories from my students that honestly changed how I teach. Not because these people were dramatic or special, but because their experiences were so real. And I think you are going to recognize yourself in at least one of them. While you listen, I want you to let the stories land. Let them relax you. Let them remind you that fluency is not just about knowing English. It is about feeling safe enough to use it. And just quickly, if you like this calm, supportive style, where you can just listen and feel yourself opening up, you can subscribe to the channel. No pressure at all, but it means you will find your way back here whenever you need a little English comfort and confidence. Okay. The first story is about a man I will call Daniel. Daniel was a manager. He had a strong job, a busy schedule, and a lot of responsibility. And from the outside, he looked confident. But in English, he felt small. He told me something that I still remember so clearly. He said, in my language, I am charismatic. In English, I am invisible. That sentence hit me because it was not about vocabulary. It was about identity. Daniel was not just trying to say words. He was trying to be himself. And every time he spoke English, he felt like he became a lower resolution version of who he really was, like the color drained out of his personality. He told me what would happen in meetings. He would have ideas, good ideas, but by the time he translated them in his head and tried to make them perfect, the conversation had moved on. Or he would say something short and simple, and then he would hate how it sounded. He said, I sound like I do not care. I sound boring. And the truth was, he cared a lot. He was just trapped behind his own standards. I asked him, what are you afraid will happen if you speak in a more natural way, with simpler words, maybe with mistakes? And he said, they will think I am not smart. They will think I am not ready for this job. So this is what changed for me after Daniel. I stopped focusing so much on perfect language and started focusing more on presence. Because when you feel pressure, you shrink. You speak less. You stop taking up space in the conversation. And people do not connect with you through perfect grammar. They connect with you through clarity, energy, and intention. With Daniel, we practice something that sounds almost too simple. We practice speaking with a clear opinion, even if the English was not fancy. We practiced starting sentences before he felt ready. We practiced saying things like, "My view is, I want to add something. Here is what I think." Just to be clear, let me put it simply. And at first, he felt exposed, like he was stepping on stage without a costume. But then something shifted. He realized that when he showed up with confidence, people did not focus on his small mistakes. They focused on his message, and more importantly, he started to feel like himself again. Not exactly the same as in his first language, but not invisible. More like a new version of himself that still had personality. So if you relate to Daniel, I want you to hear this clearly. Your English does not need to carry your entire identity perfectly. It just needs to carry your meaning. And meaning is not fragile. It can survive an accent. It can survive a wrong preposition. It can survive a sentence that is not beautifully shaped. You are allowed to sound like a real person who is thinking while speaking, because that is what you are. The second story is about a woman I will call Lena. Lena was preparing for job interviews. She was very motivated, very organized, and she came to our sessions with pages of notes. She had prepared answers for every possible interview question, and she was doing what so many adults do. She was trying to control everything. The problem was, the moment I asked a question in a slightly different way, she panicked. Not on the outside. On the outside, she looked calm. But inside, she said it felt like falling. She would start searching her memory for the perfect prepared answer. And while she searched, her face would go a little blank. Then she would start speaking, but it sounded unnatural, like she was reading from inside her head. One day she told me that I cannot speak if I cannot predict. I need to know where the sentence is going before I start. That was a big moment because it showed me something important. For a lot of adult learners, the biggest problem is not English. It is the need to feel in control. And speaking is not a controlled activity. Speaking is a living activity. It is messy, it is responsive, it is full of tiny surprises. Lena was not struggling because she did not know enough. She was struggling because she did not trust herself to handle the moment. She believed that if she did not have a perfect plan, she would fail. And her brain agreed with her. Her brain was like, okay, danger, freeze. So we changed the goal. Instead of trying to deliver perfect answers, we practice something I call flexible speaking. It is that skill of staying calm when the conversation takes a turn. It is being able to answer a question you did not expect without falling apart. How do you do that? You stop trying to build a perfect sentence in your head. You start with something real, something human. You buy yourself a second with simple phrases that are completely normal in English. Things like, "That is a great question. Let me think for a second. I have not thought about it that way. I would say. And then you speak in small pieces. You do not force yourself to produce a perfect paragraph. I remember Lena practicing this and laughing because it felt too easy. She said, "Wait, I can say, 'Let me think,' and that is okay." And I said, "Yes, that is what native speakers do all the time. We pause, we think, We restart. We change direction mid-sentence. And when Lena gave herself permission to be human, her English became more fluent. Not because she learned more words, but because she stopped blocking her own words. If you are the kind of person who overprepares, who wants to know exactly what to say before you speak, I want you to try something. Next time you speak English, start before you feel ready. Start with a simple entry sentence. Let your mouth begin and let your brain catch up. That is not careless. That is how speaking works. The third story is about a student I will call Ahmed. Ahmed had moved to a new country, and he told me he felt lonely in a way he did not expect. Not because he was surrounded by unfriendly people, people were polite, people smiled, but he could not join. He could not enter the casual conversations that happen in hallways, in elevators, at lunch. He said, "Everyone is talking, and I am there, but I am not there." He was describing something I have heard many times, that painful feeling of being physically present, but socially absent. And it was not because he could not understand. He understood most of what people said. His challenge was speed. By the time he formed his sentence, the moment passed. One day he told me something that changed how I teach listening and speaking. He said, "When people talk, I listen with fear. I listen and think, please do not ask me something. Please do not look at me." That made me stop, because a lot of people assume listening is passive, like you just receive information. But Ahmed showed me that listening can be emotional. It can be tense. It can be defensive. And if you listen with fear, you do not really listen. You scan for danger. You do not relax into the meaning. So with Ahmed, we did something that sounds almost like therapy, but it was really about communication. We worked on safety. We worked on giving him simple tools to enter conversations without pressure. Not big, impressive sentences, small bridges. We practiced micro responses, those little reactions that keep you connected, even if you do not have a long sentence. Things like, "Oh, really? No way. That makes sense. I know what you mean. That is interesting. Good for you. That sounds stressful. I have been there." These are not fake. They are normal human responses. And when you can use them, you stop feeling like you are outside the circle. We also practiced asking simple follow-up questions. Because here is a secret: you do not have to carry the conversation with long speeches. You can carry it with curiosity. People love talking about themselves, their weekend, their favorite food, their plans. And when you ask a good question, you belong in the conversation. Ahmed started trying this at work. He told me later that he still did not speak a lot, but he felt less invisible, he felt included. And that feeling made him braver. Once you feel included, you take more risks. And once you take more risks, you improve faster. So if you feel socially blocked in English, if you feel quiet and left out, I want you to focus less on sounding impressive and more on staying connected. You do not need perfect stories. You just need small, real reactions. You are allowed to be simple. Simple is powerful. The fourth story is about someone I will call Sophia. Sophia had excellent English. Seriously, great vocabulary, strong grammar, clear pronunciation, and she still said she hated speaking. She said speaking made her feel tense in her chest, like she could not breathe deeply. She told me that after she spoke, she would replay everything in her head for hours. She would remember one mistake and feel embarrassed all over again, even if no one else noticed. Sophia was dealing with perfectionism, but not in a cute, harmless way, in a painful way. And this is so common with adults who are high achievers. They have succeeded in life by being careful, by doing things correctly, by avoiding mistakes. And then speaking English forces them into a situation where mistakes are normal. And their nervous system is like, absolutely not. Sophia told me she felt like she had one chance, like every conversation was a performance, and that pressure made her sound less natural, and it made her speak in a tight, controlled way. And the more controlled she sounded, the more she judged herself. There was one moment I remember clearly. She told me she had been at a dinner with colleagues. Someone asked her a question and she answered. It was fine. But later she realized she had used the wrong word. Not a big mistake, just the wrong word. And she said she felt heat in her face and thought, they must think I am pretending. They must think I am not as professional as they thought. That is what perfectionism does. It takes a small moment and turns it into a threat to your identity. So what changed for me after Sophia is that I stopped trying to push people to speak more without addressing the self-judgment. Because if you speak and then punish yourself mentally, your brain learns that speaking is unsafe. It learns that English equals pain. Of course, you will avoid it. With Sophia, we worked on what I call a kinder inner voice. Not fake positivity, not pretending everything is great, but a more realistic voice, the kind of voice you would use with a friend. If your friend made a small mistake, would you think they were unprofessional? Or would you think, oh, that happens? We also practiced something very specific. We practiced recovery, because fluent speakers are not people who never make mistakes. Fluent speakers are people who recover smoothly. They say, sorry, let me rephrase that. What I am trying to say is, actually a better word is, and they keep going. Sophia had this belief that if she corrected herself, it would look bad, but the opposite is true. A calm correction looks confident. It shows you are aware and flexible. It shows you are in control of the meaning, even if the first attempt was not perfect. Over time, Sophia started speaking with more ease, not because she became flawless, but because she became less afraid of being flawed. So if you are hard on yourself, I want you to think about the cost of that. Yes, high standards can push you to improve, but harsh self-judgment shuts your voice down. And your voice matters. English is not a test you take once. It is a relationship you build over time. You deserve to build it in a way that feels supportive, not punishing. Now, the fifth story. This one is special because it surprised me. I will call him Miguel. Miguel told me he had a strange problem. When he spoke English, he felt like he was watching himself from the outside, like he was not inside the conversation. He was monitoring. He was checking his grammar, checking his pronunciation, checking how he looked, checking if the other person looked bored. And because he was monitoring so much, he could not relax. He said something that honestly made me smile because it was so accurate. He said, "My brain is like a strict manager standing behind me while I talk." Miguel had learned English in a very rule-focused way. He knew a lot about English. But speaking is not knowledge. Speaking is a skill. And skills live in your body, not just in your mind. Speaking is rhythm, timing, breath, confidence, and attention. If your attention is locked inside your head, you cannot fully connect with the person in front of you. Miguel would translate word by word. Not always, but when he got nervous, he would go back to translation. And translation is slow. Translation creates that feeling of traffic in your brain. Too many cars, not enough space, and so I asked him, "When do you speak best?" And he said, "When I'm tired, or after a drink, or when I'm joking." And I said, "Yes, because in those moments, your inner manager is quieter. You are not monitoring as much. You are not trying to be perfect. You are just communicating." What changed for me after Miguel is that I started teaching people how to move their attention outward, away from self-monitoring and toward meaning, because fluency is not created by controlling every word, and it is created by staying with the message. We practice speaking while focusing on one simple goal: make the other person understand, not impress them, not sound native, not prove anything, just help them understand. We also practiced using chunks, like ready-made phrases, not memorized speeches, but natural phrases you can lean on. Things like, "The main point is, what I mean is, it depends." As far as I know from my experience, I am not sure, but these phrases help your brain because you are not building every sentence from zero. And then we worked on something that might sound almost too small, but it is powerful. Breathing. Miguel would hold his breath when he spoke. A lot of adults do. They get tense, their shoulders rise, their throat tightens, and their voice becomes less steady. When you breathe out slowly while you speak, your voice becomes calmer, and your brain receives a signal that you are safe. Miguel told me later that focusing on breath and message made him feel more present, less like he was performing and more like he was participating. So if you feel stuck in your head when you speak, if you are constantly checking yourself, try this. In your next conversation, choose one anchor. It can be the other person's face, it can be the topic, it can be your breath. And when you notice yourself drifting into self-judgment, gently come back to the anchor. You do not need to fight your thoughts. Just return. Now, I want to zoom out for a moment. These 5 stories might look different on the surface. A manager feeling invisible, a job seeker who needs control, a newcomer who feels socially absent, a perfectionist who replays mistakes, a careful speaker trapped in self-monitoring. But underneath, there is one shared truth. Speaking English is not just a language task, it is an emotional task. And that is why you can understand so much and still struggle to speak because understanding feels safer. You can stay hidden. Speaking puts you on the edge. Speaking is you stepping forward. So let me talk to you like I talk to my students in real life. If your English comes out slower than your thoughts, that is normal. If you sometimes forget simple words, normal. If you feel confident one day and block the next, normal. Your fluency is not a straight line. It is a relationship with your nervous system, your confidence, your habits, and your environment. Think about where you feel most blocked. Is it at work when you feel you must sound professional? Is it in social situations when you want to be funny or warm but you cannot find the words fast enough? Is it with strangers when you worry about being judged? Is it with people you admire when you feel you need to prove yourself? Different situations create different pressure, and pressure changes how your brain works. Under stress, your brain wants to be safe, not fluent. It wants to avoid mistakes, not explore language. That is why your mind goes blank. That is why you suddenly cannot remember a word you knew yesterday. It is not because you lost it. It is because your access to it is blocked by stress. So what do we do with that? We stop treating speaking like a performance and we start treating it like a practice, a living practice. I want to give you a few gentle shifts you can try, not as rules, just as invitations. First, stop waiting for perfect sentences. Perfect sentences are slow. Real conversation is fast and imperfect. Give yourself permission to speak in shorter phrases. Let your sentences be simple. Simple is not childish. Simple is clear. Second, let yourself use your personality even in small ways. If you are someone who is warm, let yourself be warm with a small phrase like, "That is so nice, I love that. That is a good idea." If you are someone who is direct, be direct. If you are playful, be playful with what you have. You do not need advanced humor to show friendliness. Sometimes just smiling and saying, "Yeah, exactly," is enough to build connection. Third, practice recovery. Make peace with small mistakes by learning how to keep moving. If you say the wrong word, correct it calmly. If you start a sentence and it gets messy, restart. People do this constantly in English. It is normal. You are not failing. You are speaking. And fourth, stop translating every word. I know, this is hard. But you can train yourself to think in meaning instead of in sentences. When you want to say something, ask yourself, what is the main idea? What feeling do I want to communicate? And then use the English you have to send that message, even if it is not elegant. Let me give you an example. Imagine you want to say, "I feel frustrated because I had so many ideas, but I could not express them, and now I feel like people do not know the real me." That is a beautiful, complex thought, but you might not be able to say it smoothly under pressure. So you could say, "Honestly, I get frustrated. I have ideas, but I cannot say them fast, and then I feel people do not really know me." That is still you, that still communicates, and you can build from there. Fluency grows when you speak at the level you can actually access in real life, not the level you can write in a notebook. Real fluency is usable, and I want to normalize something else. You might never feel 100% confident before you speak. Confidence often comes after you speak, you survive, you realize it was okay, and then your confidence grows. Waiting to feel ready can keep you stuck for a long time. So maybe the goal is not to feel confident first. Maybe the goal is to feel willing, willing to try, willing to be a little imperfect, willing to sound like yourself, even if your English is still growing. I have watched people transform with this shift, not overnight, but steadily. And it is not because they suddenly learned 1,000 new words. It is because they stopped fighting themselves every time they spoke. Let me bring you back to those students for one last reflection. Daniel taught me that people are not just learning English, they are trying to be seen. If you feel invisible in English, your job is not to become perfect. Your job is to show up with your message, even if it is simple. Lena taught me that control can feel safe, but it can also trap you. If you need to predict everything, practice responding to the unexpected with calm filler phrases and short, honest answers. You are allowed to think while you speak. Ahmed taught me that listening can be full of fear, and fear creates distance. If you feel left out socially, focus on connection, those tiny reactions and questions that keep you in the circle. Sophia taught me that perfectionism can silence even the strongest English. If you judge yourself harshly, you will avoid speaking. Practice kindness and recovery instead. Mistakes are not proof that you are not good enough. They are proof that you are doing the thing. Miguel taught me that over-monitoring steals presence. If you feel stuck in your head, anchor your attention outward to the person, to the meaning, to your breath. Your job is to communicate, not to manage every word. Now, as you finish listening today, I want you to choose one small thing to carry with you. Not 5 things, not a whole new personality, just one. Maybe it is letting yourself start speaking before you feel ready. Maybe it is using simple bridge phrases. Maybe it is correcting yourself without shame. Maybe it is focusing in connection instead of performance. And if you want, you can do a tiny practice right now, just in your mind. Think of a situation where you usually feel blocked. Maybe it is a meeting. Maybe it is a phone call. Maybe it is small talk. Now imagine you are there and you feel that familiar pressure rising. Your chest tightens a little, your brain speeds up. In that moment, instead of forcing a perfect sentence, imagine yourself taking a slow breath and saying something simple and real. Something like, "Let me think for a second," or "What I mean is," or "Honestly, I think." Feel how that small phrase gives you a doorway into the conversation. You do not need the whole speech, you just need the doorway. That is what fluent speaking often is. Doorways, little entrances, small steps forward, and every time you take one, your brain learns, I can do this, I can handle this, I can stay with the moment. You are allowed to be in progress. You are allowed to sound like an adult who is thinking, reacting, and connecting. That is not less fluent. That is real fluent. And next time you make a mistake, I want you to try something different. Instead of collecting it like evidence against yourself, let it pass like weather. Notice it, adjust if you need to, and keep going. You are not here to be perfect. You are here to communicate your life. I will leave you with this. The goal is not to sound like someone else. The goal is to sound like you in English. Clearer, calmer, more present, little by little. And you are closer than you think.